Oh, so fabulous.
Welcome back to the channel once again. It's your girl Dumebi. If this is your first time coming across my channel, you're welcome. I do hope you decide to subscribe, and if you are a returning subscriber, you guys know that I love you. It's so good to have you here. Welcome back. Before we get into today's video, my usual disclaimer: please, this video is strictly for educational purposes. Do not go searching out anybody that I talk about in this video. Don't send them any form of hate comment, threats, or violence. This channel does not support any of that. So I came across a couple of videos that were made by this sister, and she had something to say pertaining the relationship between foreign black people and African Americans when they come into America. Let's just go right ahead and roll the clip.
Please recognize that a lot of the anti-blackness directed towards Black Americans from foreign people of color derives from jealousy. See, to be Black American is to be marginalized and disenfranchised, but from a foreign perspective, you're marginalized and disenfranchised in America, which is the best place to be marginalized in, from a foreigner's perspective. I am from a foreign family. I've said this before and it bears repeating. My family is Jamaican. I'm mixed race. I was born in Montego Bay, Jamaica, emigrated to the United States when I was 5, and I am now a naturalized citizen. So in addition to growing up and being socialized in America and matriculating through the American public education system and the university system, I have that lived perspective in addition to the lived perspective of being raised by foreigners. Like, a lot of the opportunities for advancement, for job placement, for obtaining a formal education that are here in America, that exist in America, are of course taken for granted by American citizens who are born here. These opportunities are unheard of in most parts of the world. For example, in Jamaica, the opportunities for employment, right? You can graduate from high school here in America and literally go work at Target or at the Dollar Tree or go learn a trade or something like that. It's not desirable. It's not what society wants you to do. You know, society says that you should be working in a corporate structure, but the opportunity at least exists. There's also opportunity for obtaining a 4-year college degree through the provision of student loans that are widely available to most eligible individuals.
Okay, first of all, to point out something, she said you can graduate and go and work in like Dollar Tree or like some smaller establishments that are not exactly corporate establishments. As someone who is living in Africa, I can say we have that over here too, but those jobs are like lower paying jobs. There's no, you're not required to have a degree to do that. They are not, you know, it's just, these are just random jobs that people just pick up to get by while they are looking for something better or trying to finish up school or something. So yeah, it's not like those opportunities are available only in America. We have them elsewhere. I just needed to state that. One thing we definitely do not have is student loans. There's nothing like free education. Yeah, funny enough, there's supposed to be, we get these promises by the government and all of that, but a lot of the time, maybe sometimes it's followed through, but a lot of the time it's not really followed through. So there's really no provision to help you go to school, no financial provision to help you go to school if you do not have parents who can afford it, or if you're not ready to work to afford it. So I think abroad they have student loans, so you don't have to come from a family that can afford to send you to school. You can just have student loans. So I think, yeah, that's an advantage people in America have. Yeah.
Individuals, in addition to community college and junior college that's available to folks who wouldn't qualify for federal student loans, but who can work and put themselves through school and pay for tuition out of pocket. Those similar employment and educational opportunities do not exist in places like Jamaica, where you have to be born into a wealthy family to be able to afford a 4-year college degree, because there is no national student loan structure to pay for a university degree. There aren't as many places for employment that don't exist outside of like a hospital or the tourism industry, or if you're not related to a family member who works in like the HR department or the hiring department for a particular place of employment. For example, how I, as an American citizen, can walk into a Costco or a Walmart or a Target or something and be hired based on, you know, my experience or based on my knowledge or what have you. Those places don't exist in Jamaica. So being able to just walk into some
those places exist. I saw people in the comment section. There was someone who kind of disagreed, saying you can get jobs without knowing people. But of course, some of the higher paying jobs, you might need to know somebody who can put you in. And it's unfortunate that that's the case. It happens here also in Nigeria. It happens in Africa as well. You know, you have to know somebody who has the connections to get you to places. Getting things off of merit doesn't work in all situations, especially in situations where there's big money. involved in like higher paying jobs.
So being able to just walk into somewhere with a piece of paper and the ability to work and find that work, that itself, that opportunity is non-existent in most places in the world. So understand that foreign people of color who live in these places where opportunity is few and far between, unless you're born into the moneyed class or unless you're born into the noble class, look at Black Americans living in America and are envious and are jealous. And their thing is, well, what are you complaining about? You don't know anything about marginalization or what it truly means to be dispossessed or what it really means to be oppressed, because you're in America. You have all these opportunities, you have all these chances, you have justice, you have laws and discrimination laws that protect you. Those things don't exist where I'm coming from. So what's the
Now, what she's saying actually makes sense. There are a lot of people, I can speak for what I know, African people, Nigerian people. I've heard some people say all they do is complain. All those African Americans do is complain. Like over here, do they know what we're suffering? There are opportunities over there that those people should be taking advantage of instead of complaining. I've heard things like that because at this point now, we are like comparing who has it worse. We have it worse here in Africa. If only I can find my way to America, just see what I'm going to become in a couple of years. Those people are there and opportunities are wasting. So that is the mentality, and that's what she's saying. She's right with what
big
she's
deal
saying.
with you? And again, it's envy because, yeah, you're marginalized, but you're marginalized in America where you have a right to legal advice. You have a right to a speedy and fair trial. You have a right to be protected from unreasonable government search and seizure. You have discrimination laws that protect you. You know what I mean? Like you have all of these things that protect you that you're just born into just by accident of birth that I don't have in my own country. Mix that envy and jealousy in with the
Well, are we going to call it envy or jealousy? Yeah, I think you can call it jealousy. Like, you guys are there wasting opportunities. Try being born over here in my country and let me see if you have something to complain about. I think that's where that comes from. Like, you guys are misusing the mentality now. I'm not saying this. The mentality is like, oh, African Americans are misusing the opportunity. Yes, you're marginalized, but you're marginalized in America. No matter how bad it is over there, you can never have it as bad as we have it back here. So like we're comparing trauma right now.
the existing anti-blackness that pervades almost every society on the planet, and boom, you have activists and the Palestinian liberation movement being anti-black and racist towards Black Americans. For my Black American brothers and sisters, understand that that's where a lot of the antipathy from other foreign people of color comes from. It's nothing, its basis is in jealousy and envy, and even though that sounds like an oversimplification, I promise you it's not. Again, I grew up in a foreign family, being raised by foreigners, living here in America, while at home I was being socialized as a foreigner, and then in public society and public schools that I was attending and jobs that I held, I was being socialized in American. As an American, I can tell you that perspective that I'm speaking from is absolutely valid. And one last thing, another perspective to add to this is that when you come to America as a foreigner, in addition to fighting white supremacy, in addition to fighting poverty, now you're fighting xenophobia, right? Now you're fighting the immigration system and having to spend tens of thousands of dollars, if you have it, and years matriculating through the immigration system in the US. Foreigners like myself who have to deal with the United States Center for Immigration Services, who have to worry about ICE, who have to worry about whether their green card needs to be renewed, who have to pay for the exorbitant fees that it costs to apply for citizenship, because citizenship is not automatically granted to folks just because you live here for X amount of years. It is something that you have to apply for. It costs thousands of dollars, and it takes years for your application to process. It's not an immediate, yes, congratulations, you're now a US citizen. They have to go through your entire immigration record from the very date you set foot on US soil to determine whether or not you're even eligible to be a US citizen. And all while that process is ongoing, you are experiencing xenophobia, you are experiencing or struggling with your dual identity. On the one hand, you're not fully American, so you're not quite in with American crowds, but on the other hand, your family and your immediate network don't view you as being a full native of the homeland either, because now you live in America and you grew up here and you've been socialized here. So you struggle with those identity complexes and whatnot, all while you're waiting for the US government to turn around and say, okay, yeah, you can be here.
So basically, she's pointing out all the many things immigrants have to like struggle for, all the many things that are just not handed to immigrants on getting there. Like, aside trying to survive, you're dealing with the fact that you have to assimilate to the culture over there while still preserving your own culture. Then you're having to deal with the struggle of trying to become a citizen, trying to get gainful employment, and all of these things that are not outrightly provided to you right off the bat because you're an immigrant. So you're dealing with all of this, and on the other hand, there are the African Americans that don't have to deal with some of these things. So there's this tendency to feel like you think you're struggling. Have you been in my shoes, where I'm coming from, and then what I have to deal with in America here to be able to even have the opportunity you were born into as a black person in America? So that's what she's trying to say. She's trying to explain why there's some form of anti-blackness by black people who move to America, because they feel like things we're struggling with back home before we came here, and the things we're even still struggling with back here because we're immigrants. We have so much that you guys obviously didn't have to deal with, and yet you're complaining. This way of thinking is what is causing that anti-blackness towards black Americans, because there's this envy and jealousy, like, y'all are so privileged, you don't even see it. Instead, you decide to focus on marginalization. So that's what she's explaining. And believe me, the number of immigrants that think like this, even we back home, I'm not going to lie, think the same thing as well. Like, yes, they don't like you, they are anti-black, they are this, they are that, but yes, you can still refuse to focus on those people and make money. Do your thing. Leave them. Who cares if nobody likes you? So yeah, I kind of like diverted. But anyways, you guys see what I'm trying to say.
Here forever now, basically. My mom raised my sister and I while my mom and I were undocumented immigrants. My sister was born here, thank God, but my mom and I were undocumented immigrants for 15 years. Not because we came here illegally, not because we came here, you know, by subverting the process. We arrived with visas. My mother was married to my father, who was a Jamaican national, who was also a U.S. citizen. So this process wasn't because of any of our own doing. We came here, lived an upper middle class lifestyle, and came from the upper class of Jamaican society, and yet and still we still struggled. So for my black American brothers and sisters, add all of those nuances to not explain away or to justify the racism and the anti-blackness that we're seeing from foreign communities of color, but to explain it so that you understand where it's coming from. Foreign people of color are deeply envious of black Americans and the privileges and the liberties black Americans seemingly have here in the United States. And yes, they full well know that those privileges are always at risk of being taken away by white patriarchal structures, because these foreign communities of color are subject to those same structures abroad. They know that. The issue is that unlike black Americans, they don't have the balls to stand up to those patriarchal structures. And that's another element of the envy. Something that my black American friends have taught me, a phrase that I carry with me everywhere, is that closed mouths don't get fed. Black Americans fully understand that and have understood that from day one, which is why black Americans were marching, protesting, boycotting, burning down slave plantations, making speeches until rights that they should have been born with were given to them almost by force. Black Americans were not afraid to stand up to white patriarchal structures.
You see this right here? This is something I have been skeptical about saying on this channel, or I've been asking myself, what is the best way to say this so that I don't sound like I'm selling the continental Africans out? Because I actually admire the tenacity. I admire the resolve of African Americans, the ancestral ones, and even now. How much, it doesn't matter how many injustices are done. It doesn't matter how many millions of marches y'all have done. Y'all are still ready to go out there and march and protest and ask for your rights and ask for justice to be served. But I, in my lifetime as a Nigerian, with everything that is going on here, that we know that we're being, we know the things that we're suffering. We know the people who are doing this to us. I've experienced just two protests in my lifetime. Just two. Asking for justice. Asking for a change. So I see African American people as not afraid to fight. They are brave. They are making the changes that need to be made. But on the other hand, we back home, we are going to do, like, if you watch the other video, that one of, Chinese people being racist in Asia, just like that woman who complained about the racism. She ended the video saying, God will punish them, thunder will fire them. She was even not brave enough to call the name, to call them out, the people that she was addressing those insults to. So we are always wanting to leave it for God, or waiting for something to happen one day. Nobody wants to be the one to start a movement. And now there's reason for that too. Like, when you do it, you're putting yourself out there as a target. It's not easy. You might lose your life or whatever. It's not easy to come out and say, but African Americans who do this are also aware of the risk, and they still do it. The freedom they have today was for people who knew the risk and still went for it. I don't know when we are going to get to that level of bravery and activism over here. To the point that there are some things that happen in Africa that even when I want to make videos about them and I'm looking for stitches online of what people airing their opinions, I don't find stitches because nobody wants to come out and talk about these things. Nobody wants to come out and talk about the real issues.
To white patriarchal structures and white supremacy, and still today stand up to white supremacy in ways that foreign communities of color are just too afraid to do. And those foreign communities of color are also envious of Black Americans' bravery for standing up to white supremacist structures and then in turn being rewarded with rights and liberties for standing up to those structures. Unfortunately, this is all just another version of high school. It's all just another version of schoolyard bullying, and foreign people of color are just very deeply envious and jealous of the privileges they think Black Americans have in the United States and how Black Americans are born into those privileges, and also the ballsy bravery and courage that Black Americans have in demanding that those privileges, those rights, those liberties stay in place.
So she made a second video.
So I've talked about how foreign people of color are jealous of the perceived privileges that Black American people have. And based on the feedback in my comments from Black American people, I would like to add some key details to that discussion. The biggest takeaway that I observed from the feedback in that video from Black American people is that foreign people of color absolutely refuse to accept and acknowledge the price that Black people had to pay to have these liberties and privileges. And it's a price that Black American people still pay today. It's a price that was paid in blood, bones, backs, muscles, joints, autonomy, freedom, etc. See, what I've observed being a foreigner myself and being raised in a foreign family, what I've observed is that foreigners are in this like silent one-way competition with Black American people as to who is oppressed more. And it's very much like oppression Olympics. Yeah, well, you have that stuff going on in your country. In my country, we have XYZ. In my country, our politicians are all corrupt.
I don't know if I would call it like a competition or oppression Olympics. I think each side is eager to tell their story. Like, okay, this is where you are. Appreciate where you are. Over here, this is it. You know, I don't think it's like, I don't know.
All corrupt. In my country, we have famines. In my country, etc., etc. It's like this routine dismissal of the price that Black Americans have to pay to be American. As so many of the commenters in that video pointed out, being Black in America has not been a cakewalk, for lack of a better phrase. It hasn't been something easy. And something else that Black American people also pointed out is that foreigners can choose to migrate to America and move to America because foreign people of color, we have autonomy. We have agency in being able to choose where we live and where we call home. For Black American people, historically, that choice was robbed from them. It was deprived from them because imperial powers traveled to the continent of Africa, kidnapped African individuals by violence and by force, trafficked them to the Americas, and then forced them into chattel slavery for hundreds of years. Like, we cannot underestimate the centuries that Black American people spent as enslaved property in the eyes of the law. Then after that chattel slavery was over, Black Americans then had to spend a subsequent, 2 centuries under Jim Crow and segregation laws still being viewed as inhumane property? Can we please remember that Black American people did not have the right to vote in elections until the 1960s? 1964 specifically. My mother was born in 1966, just for reference, and I'm a 31-year-old millennial. Thank you to all of the commenters who provided that feedback in that video, and please forgive me, the only reason I didn't include these important pieces in my discussion was just for time constraints. But yeah, foreign people of color are envious of Black Americans and absolutely, by the same token, refuse to acknowledge the price that Black Americans have had to pay to live in America, and it's a price that they still have to pay. And also refuse to acknowledge that, yes, although we come to America and experience xenophobia, we had agency and we had autonomy and the power of choice in coming to America. That was a privilege.
You know, this kind of reminds me of some of the comments I see in the comment section of some of my videos where African Americans are like, why are you guys running over here to the West? Go to Africa and build your country. Fight for your rights in your country. Fight for your country. Take your country back from the people that are destroying it. You know, and it's true because we actually have a choice to stay back and fight or to go. And nobody wants to be a martyr. Like, I feel like all these things, it's getting to the tipping point. Eventually, it's going to happen. Believe me, it is going to happen. I just don't know if it's going to be in our generation. And let's not even ignore the fights that some of our ancestors have done. Some of them have fought. Before even colonization, a lot of communities fought the British, fought the colonizers before they eventually lost the fight. You know, even before we got independence, there was some fight also had then. So basically, our people have been fighting, but I don't know. I think they've just sunk their hands so deep. I'm not going to say that it cannot be reversed. It's just going to take decades. It's going to take a lot of sweat, blood, and tears. It's going to take even beyond protests. Who are you protesting to? And what is worse is that the figurehead of the people that are doing this, that are upholding these things on behalf of the colonizers, because they are doing it, they are in bed with those colonizers, is our brothers. We are seeing our own brothers and sisters, people that look like us, in bed with those people to keep us oppressed.
Coming to America. That was a privilege that was ultimately deprived from Black Americans. If it were up to Black Americans, they would not have come to America. Again, they were kidnapped by violent imperial powers and then forced into centuries of chattel slavery by force, by violence. All agency, all autonomy, all choice was removed from them. So of course, Black Americans are going to watch foreign people of color come here and get to live in post-Jim Crow, post-segregation America, post-chattel slavery America, and then get to claim, oh yeah, America's this great land of milk and honey, has all these wonderful opportunities that I don't have in my home country. And Black Americans, you know, they don't take advantage of those opportunities. Because let's keep it real, with the existing anti-blackness that, you know, pervades every society on the planet, foreign people of color thus come to America and view Black Americans as lazy and thuggish for not taking advantage of all the opportunities that exist in America. Well, yeah, we can come to America and immigrate to America in the 90s and the early 2000s and say, yeah, there are opportunities, because we weren't subject to the centuries of oppression that Black Americans were subject to. Yes, our ancestors in our home countries were subject to it, but our ancestors didn't do anything about that oppression, which is why we had...
Oh, it stings whenever she say it, because deep down I know it's true. So if the people before us did not stand up to it, now it's up to us to stand up to it. If we don't, it's going to be up to our children. And Africa is getting sold little by little. Little by, they are gaining more ground. They control a lot of things. I mean, look at how many countries have palm color people that control their wealth. Look at how many industries in said African countries, different African countries, that are controlled by palm color people. We don't know it because we are seeing our Black people at the top, but the boss of that Black person at the top is probably a palm color person.
Which is why we had to leave our home countries. Black Americans here in America did, and that's why we have freedoms, because of Black Americans. And that's why you see so many foreign people of color feel perfectly comfortable fixing their lips and talking down on Black Americans, because I don't know if the psychology of it, like I've talked to my own family about this, like, is it that you view yourself as white? Is it that you view yourself as, now that you're American, you can oppress someone else, and whom you choose to oppress is Black people? Because as I've observed, foreign people of color never have this energy for the actual white systemic structures and institutions that actually oppress all of us. Foreign people of color, like I've said before, also envy the fact that Black Americans protest and boycott and speak up and fight and advocate in ways that foreign people of color don't do in our own home countries, and then come here and have the audacity to speak out the side of their necks towards Black Americans as if, like, what, you think you're white in this structure? You think you're white in this system? Because I can assure you, we're not. So if you are a foreign person of color living in America who emigrated here, or you're the children or grandchildren of immigrants, please understand and accept quickly that the only reason we were able to have the agency or the autonomy to even migrate to America in the first place is solely because of the work of Black Americans. And Black Americans living in America are American in name only. I can assure you the privileges and the liberties that we wax poetic about do not exist for most Black Americans, and have not existed for Black Americans for centuries.
So this is one of the reasons why African Americans might be upset by some of these, you know, African or Caribbean, basically African diaspora people that migrate to America and do not want to associate with them or uphold the stereotypes and have these preconceived notions. And yeah, you're taking advantage of opportunities here. You're making it big. You're making money. But you can't do that and be disrespectful to the very people who had to fight for it. So I think this when I saw this video, it really it made me think about some things. It made me go to some places I don't like to go to, because I end up feeling like, what are we doing? What is our impact? The impact of our generation? Are we really trying to make things right for our children, or are we just running away from it? As an African, we need to ask ourselves that question. Anyway, you guys let me know what you think about everything she said. Do you actually agree that foreign people of color are envious of African Americans in respect to everything that this lady said? I don't know if I'll call it envy, but I understand why she used the word envy, because when you really look at it, it looks like envy. Like, okay, we kind of want what you all have. You know, we kind of want your resilience and your fighting spirit, but we're just not there yet. You know, I can understand why she used the word envy. I want to know what you guys think in the comment section. Please don't forget to give this video a thumbs up, subscribe if you haven't, and I'll see you guys in my next video. Bye.